For more on the state of the airlines as we kick off the holiday travel season, let's bring in Oscar Munoz, former president and CEO of United Airlines. He's also a CNBC contributor. Oscar, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to ask a more broad question than about the specifics of this travel season, which look like it may either set records or get us back to 2019 levels at the very least. And ask a broader question, and that is the air traffic system brittle right now? In other words, are there enough pilots? Are there enough support staff? Are there enough controllers, et cetera?
Well, so there's two different infrastructure items, right? There's air traffic control as a system, which is, I think, in poor and brittle and outdated condition. And I've been very vocal over many years about the need for us as a nation to reinvest in that. With regards to the people and human and operational side, it is much better than it was last Thanksgiving. And yes, it'll be another record demand. We have weather coming up. But at the same time, I think the system itself and the things that the airlines can control and that airports can control, we're in a slightly better place, although there's always cavities of locations.
You keep hearing about pilot shortages even at your alma mater, United. I mean, you keep hearing that there just aren't enough pilots, and they're having to go out and pay super bonuses to attract people and poach them from FedEx and UPS and so forth.
Again, there's clearly a continuing message from certain airlines along the path. You don't hear quite as much of that from the more larger airlines. Mm-hmm. It is the preeminent place to be if you're a pilot and where you want to get to. So clearly there's a pecking order, and some of the smaller airlines may have some vacates going to the bigger airlines. But by and large, I think the bigs are doing something pretty worthwhile in creating the pipeline for the future on that. So yes, there'll always be shortages. There'll always be more people that you can get. But again, that's not as much of the concern with the larger airlines in the country.
And I also, Oscar, if you'll indulge, have a couple of questions about the industry right now. One of which is, we do hear after the reports of a lot of near misses last year that the air traffic controllers themselves and a lot of the workers in airports, that's maybe an area where there's some brittleness, to use Tyler's word. Do we have some issues there, and how can those be fixed and addressed?
So that's always a difficult conversation because we're going into a governmental agency, and they are people we rely on, all of us as U.S. citizens rely on for our safety. And so their brittleness over time has been a lack of resources, a lack of hiring, and then, of course, the training that's required and the experience, more importantly, to deal with these issues. As we mentioned, next week is a busy week, potentially weather in different places. It's always great to have people that have been around and have handled that before. So you have that human brittleness to some degree. How you fix it? I mean, there's an FAA reauthorization bill coming up. Clearly, those agencies need money, need the right training programs to get, just like any other entity or business that we have, is to have that pipeline of qualified, trained individuals to keep all of us safe in the air.
I'm also glad we're showing shares of JetBlue, which are down almost 5% today, and Southwest. Spirit's up there as well. But what's going on with some of these smaller players? A lot all of a sudden has been made of these Southwest discount fares and whether they reveal that there's bigger problems at that airline. JetBlue, of course, has had a lot of operational challenges in recent years. It used to be one of the best airlines. Now it's more often found among the worst. What are the implications of that? How do you think we got here? And do we need more M&A? It's always so difficult to have that conversation in a highly regulated space.
Yeah, there's M&A going on. We're waiting for a big decision with a couple of those companies. But by and large, consumer demand is a market-based and efficient program, right? People will go where they know they're going to get their flight out on time. They're going to get the right service to different places. So the consumer will indeed vote with their wallet and go to the right places. Demand, at least let's say for this week, is very strong across the board, strong to stable, if nothing more. I think one of the things that you have when you talk about fares, and in my old world, we never talked about pricing publicly, but as a general nature, it is a function not so much of demand, but of capacity. I think some of the airlines you mentioned are growing and have a lot of capacity, more flights. If you think about them from 2019 to now, there's numbers as high as 40%
wow.
increase in the amount of flying. Someone like a United and Delta are more moderate. So it's probably a 10x capacity build. So they have a lot of planes going to a lot of places, and they got to fill them, right? If you have that. So that'll tend to bring the fare sales down. It is not necessarily a demand issue. It is a bit of a product choice perspective. And again, and the fares, their equities declining is a larger function of what we call cost convergence, where the cost of fuel, the cost of pilots, as mentioned before, is hitting those usually low-cost airlines, and their cost basis is increasing. So they're having to scramble a little bit more. And as the equity holders look to the future, they don't see necessarily the right path. And again, to some degree, my opinion for sure, you're beginning to see a little break in the industry from the bigger, more established carriers that have been able to manage and can fly places like international to make up some of the revenue, and some of the lower cost, or I think the new term is LMAs, lower margin airlines, that are being affected, and certainly the stock market's affecting that.